ki, Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This morning we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 11, entitled The Childhood Pastimes of Krishna, text 38 till 40. Avidure Vrajam Bhuvam Saham Gopalam Darakaim Charayam Asatur Vatsan Nanam Kridam Parichadau Avidure Vrajabhuvaham Avidure Vrajabhuvaham Saha Gopaladarakai Saha Gopaladarakai Charanyam Asatur Vatsan Charanyam Asatur Vatsan Nana Krida Parichadau Nana Krida Parichadau Avidure Vrajabhuvam Saha Gopaladarakai Charanyam Asatur Vatsan Nana Krida Parichadau Avidure Vrajabhuvam Saha Gopaladarakai Charanyama Satur Vatsan Nana Krida Parichadau Vrajabhuvam Saha Gopaladarakai Charanyam Asatur Vatsan Nana Krida Parichadau Avidure Vrajabhuvam Saha Gopaladarakai Charanyama Satur Vatsan Nana Krida Parichadau Avidure Vrajabhuvam Sagopaladarakai Charanyama Satur Vatsan Nana Krida Parichadau Gopaladarakai Charanyama Satur Vatsan Nana Krida Parichadau Avidure Vrajabhuvam Saha Gopaladarakai Charanyama Satur Vatsan Nana Krida Parichadau Avidure Vrajabhuvam Sahagopaladarakay Charayama Saturvatsan Nana Krida Parichadao. Mataji. Avidure Vrajabhuvam Sahagopaladarakay Charayama Saturvatsan Nana Krida Parichadao. Avidure, not very far from the residential quarters of the Vrajabasis. Vrajabhuva, from the land known as Vraja. Sahagopaladarakay, with other boys of the same profession, cowherd boys. Charayam, Asatu, tended. Vatsan, the small calves. Nana, various. Kridam, sporting. Parichadao, dressed very nicely, in different ways, and equipped with implements. Translation and purport, which will come after all the verses afterwards, by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktisiddhanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Not very far from their residential quarters, both Krishna and Balaram, equipped with all kinds of playthings, played with other cowherd boys and began to tend the small calves. Text 39 and 40. Sometimes Krishna and Balaram would play on their flutes. Sometimes they would throw ropes and stones devised for getting fruits from the trees. Sometimes they would throw only stones, and sometimes their ankle bells tinkling. They would play football with fruits like bale and amalaki. Sometimes they would cover themselves with blankets and imitate cows and bulls and fight with one another, roaring loudly. And sometimes they would imitate the voices of the animals. In this way, they enjoyed sporting exactly like two ordinary human children. Purport. Vrindavan is full of peacocks. Kujat kokila hamsa sarasa ganakire mayura kule. The Vrindavan forest is always full of cuckoos, ducks, swans, peacocks, cranes, and also monkeys, bulls, and cows. So Krishna and Balaram used to imitate the sounds of these animals and enjoy sporting. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaganada Gurantam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Krishna Shri Radha Krishna Padan Shri Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Avidure Vrajabhuvam Sahagopaladarakay Charayam da asatur vatsan nana krida parichadao. Not very far away from their residential quarters, both Krishna and Balaram, equipped with all kinds of playthings, played with other cowherd boys and began to tend the small calves. Sometimes Krishna and Balaram would play on their flutes, sometimes they would throw ropes and stones devised for getting fruits from the trees, sometimes they would throw only stones, and sometimes their ankle bells tinkling. They would play football with fruits like bell and amalaki. Sometimes they would cover themselves with blankets and imitate cows and bulls and fight with one another, roaring loudly, and sometimes they would imitate the voices of the animals. In this way, they enjoyed sporting exactly like two ordinary human children. Here, the description of Krishna's pastimes in the forest is given, and we can understand that those pastimes which Krishna performed, and it's still performing, are practically identical with pastimes that most of us also have been performed in our childhood. And then also that in the future so many other boys will perform. So this is something that is just the most natural for any human being to be involved in such kind of activities. It is just a natural for any child to play like we have heard here with different kinds of fruits, or playing football or so, or even, for example, throwing stones, trying to get some fruits down, like here in the Hare Krishna land. Now the mango season is coming. Within 1 month there will be so mangoes on the trees, and many times we see devotees, they also try to get some mangoes down. So all these pastimes actually are just natural for, there is that natural propensity to perform these pastimes. But why? Because they're naturally inherent. They already exist within the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because whatever is present in the effect, it's definitely present in its cause. So Krishna plays with his friends in various ways, and we see they also here, they imitate all kinds of sounds of various kinds of animals. And we also have that propensity, so that is natural. Of course, that propensity, when reposed in Krishna, we see in the spiritual world, it's for the pleasure of Krishna. All of these activities performed by the cowherd boys and Krishna trying to encourage them in all those various kinds of pastimes are just meant for Krishna's pleasure. Of course, here in the material world, all of those propensities are reposed for our own sense gratification. And any interaction that happens among like here we are hearing about the boys, or on the friendship level, is basically to somehow gratify our own senses. So again, that perverted reality of the spiritual existence. So Krishna likes to play and perform these various pastimes with his friends. He definitely relishes all the different rasas. And this is what it's very unique, very peculiarly unique for those pastimes manifested here in the material world. Because, interestingly, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur states that as the lamp doesn't shine so brightly when there is a sun, as it shines when there is a shadow or a dark place, and as the diamond also, it doesn't shine so brilliantly on the silver platter as it shines, for example, if it would be on some kind of dark blue plate. So similarly, Krishna's pastimes are not so wonderful. They don't appear, they are wonderful, definitely, but they don't appear so wonderful in the spiritual world as they appear in this dark material world. So when Krishna comes here, and then he performs his pastimes here, and then he acts as a friend, as a son, as a father, as a husband, as a lover, whatever, any kind of activity that performs. So then those pastimes, they manifest very, very unique relish amongst his devotees. And Krishna himself also. Because why Krishna performs all of those pastimes? Well, there are two reasons. Krishna performs those pastimes because, first of all, he relishes incredible taste from it. And then also he wants to draw his devotees very near to himself. He wants to attract the devotees. As we know in Bhagavad Gita, when there is a discussion on the Paritranaya Sadhunam verse, yes, Krishna can perform various activities through his various energies, but he specifically, even more so, comes to perform the pastimes to attract his devotees. That is the primary reason. All the other reasons are secondary, to kill the demons or to reestablish principles of religion. These are all secondary. But main thing is to attract his devotees. And why Krishna also performs pastimes? Because activity, as we know actually within our sampradaya, the activity is the most important element of devotional service. That's why we are known as Rupanugas. And the deity of Rupa Goswami is Govindaji, which represents the principle of Abhideya. So that active principle in the performance of devotional service is something that generates more of the goal of Krishna Prema that we are trying to reach. Like for example, I mean Krishna is everything. Krishna is the sum total of the creation and all manifestations of it. So he is representing the principle of Sambandha. And then Srimati Radharani, she's his pleasure potency, she represents Prayojana. So now how do Sambandha and Prayojana meet? How do they come together? How do they get together? There has to be Abhideya. There has to be an active principle between that then connects the field with the goal. So therefore, when we perform devotional service, this is therefore more emphasized than in any other sampradaya or in any other process. Why? Because it's a very dynamic process. And we see how Srila Prabhupada, by performing this kind of, or presenting this kind of process and engaging also so many devotees in such kind of a process, how he created a very dynamic worldwide society. You know, it's not just some kind of mostly, well, ritualistic activities happening within certain kind of temples or so on. No, but Srila Prabhupada wanted it to become very dynamic, wanted it to become very expansive. And for that reason, he emphasized the book distribution or Harinam, Sankirtan, like this. So it's a very dynamic principle. So it's based on the Abhideya activity. That means activity with knowledge, with cognizance. Then we can get that Prayojana. So therefore, all these pastimes that Krishna performs are just amazing, very unique pastimes. And Krishna is relishing them, devotees are relishing them, and they are definitely incredibly attracted towards Krishna's activities. And even more so because Krishna appears in the two-handed form. It's not in any other form, it's just two-handed form, and it just appears as an ordinary, practically living being, or here, when we are hearing these pastimes of his childhood, as just an ordinary boy. And this is something that it's the most confusing and baffling to those who have a different conception of the absolute truth. So, what is the first step of realization towards understanding the absolute truth or God? What would be this first step? Anybody guess what would be the first step in terms of realizing God? Huh? I can't hear. I'm not this body, I'm soul. Okay. But in terms of realizing God, not realizing ourselves. Huh? Brahman. Okay. What else? Like what usually mostly say, what people usually mostly say. That, okay, I'll speed up a little bit. I said, the God is great, right? To understand the God's greatness and our insignificance, right? That's the first, pretty much first step to understand that, first of all, there is some authority there, that there is some amazing personality that we have to adore and worship and approach in case we want to gain something, and mostly that's the case, of course. But that God is great. But now, of course, to which extent and how God is great. So that is the next step to realize this. And we understand how, if we talk about Mahavishnu or something like this, the God is just incredibly great. It's just incredibly vast. It's just incredibly powerful. Everything's so wonderful. But there is a little problem with this, because then that also creates some distance. Once we know the greatness, let's say somebody powerful and somebody influential, if they would come here, we would feel some distance from them, right? We wouldn't feel like, okay, we can just approach and casually maybe talk about something and offer something or whatever. We would be very, very cautious. So that greatness creates a big difference, and distance between, say, two personality. And in this case, which we are discussing about, it creates the great distance between Krishna and his devotees. And this is what Krishna doesn't want. Krishna specifically comes so and performs his pastimes to draw his devotees near him, towards himself. This is why Krishna comes in that human form, because it's so easy. When, for example, like Mother Yashoda, she deals with a child, then she takes him and she does this with him and that with him. It's just so easy. But how would we handle universal form? We can't even handle this. We can't even imagine. And again, it becomes so far and so distant. So Krishna appears in a form which is just so much more natural that we can relate to. There's such a vast difference between. So therefore these pastimes and that Krishna performs are so sweet, are so wonderful, that those pastimes, and by this sweetness, actually Krishna covers, Krishna completely overwhelms and hides that amazingness, that his vastness, that his most expansive nature, so that he can allow himself to be approachable to his devotees. So this is something so unique. So therefore, that inhibition that is there, that presents an obstacle towards devotees to reach Krishna, that is removed. Krishna removed this by that sweetness of his personal dealings with his devotees. Of course, Krishna sometimes also, just to prove that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not just that he is so human-like only, he performs various kind of miraculous activities, as we know, lifting Govardhan hill, or performing Rasa Leela where he expands, or marrying 16,108 queens, or so on. So he performs different kinds of pastimes through which he does prove that he is not an ordinary child. But still we see, initially when he appeared as a coward boy, even Brahma and Indra, they became so confused that how could God be such a small little talkative boy, who could persuade the residents of Raja not to worship me. That's what Indra was thinking, and Lord Brahma also, that by stealing the calves and cowards boys, he became so puzzled and bewildered when Krishna manifested duplicate forms of them. So Krishna's just activities are so wonderful and amazing, yes, but again they're so sweet and so attractive as well. And that's what covers that amazing features or qualities of Krishna and energies of Krishna. So that Krishna, it's just his activities are just so attractive and so wonderful, and for that reason he appears in this human-like form, so that we can also relate to them, and they're also just the most amazing. So for that reason Krishna displays, he has the four most wonderful qualities that no other expansion of Krishna has. And one of those is beauty, is incomparable beauty, even to the extent that Vasudeva Krishna, Dwarka, Mathura, they become attracted to Braja Krishna. We know Krishna, there was once a play, and then somebody was acting as Krishna, and then he was acting so well, that acting as Krishna in Vraja, that Krishna himself, he became so attracted, he jumped on the stage and embraced that person. And then also when Krishna sees himself, he's so attractive that he becomes attracted to himself. And then we know the Cupids, millions of, and Kandarpa Koti, so many Cupids, they become attracted to Krishna. So much more than what their attraction is. And then even Lakshmi, she's so chaste, always remaining in the chest of Lord Narayan, but then she became attracted uncontrollably towards Krishna. So Krishna's beauty is just so unique, it's just so wonderful. And then of course, Krishna's pastimes, those activities that we have mentioned, that Krishna performs, they're so wonderful, that Krishna acts as a servant. Yeah. He doesn't act as a master, like in Vaikuntha. What is the mood? That everybody is in the awe and reverence, and then everybody has that kind of distant relationship with the Lord, because everybody is serving the Lord, and there the Lord is appearing as a master. But in Vraja, then Krishna's mood is that he's actually like a puppet in the hands of his devotees. And then he's subservient to them. He brings the chapels of Nanda Baba on his head. He's doing whatever. If Gopi said, Krishna, you dance, he will dance. You know, Krishna will do so many different kinds of things, anything just to amuse and to please his devotees. He will do anything. So he is serving, even to the extent that actually to realize the pleasure that his devotees experience, then he comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he comes to relish that pleasure that devotees relish in relationship to him as his servitors. So that is there. And then of course there are so many different rasas that are there, that Krishna displays. As we know, in the soil, the earth has all the qualities of all the other elements. So similarly, Madhurya Rasa has all the qualities of all the other rasas. So this is something unique that Krishna exhibits, that kind of relationship. And then the flute. Flute is something unique. Like here in this verse, it's interesting to note, it said that Krishna and Balaram would play on their flutes. So Balaram is not different than Krishna. So he also has a flute. He also can exhibit 4 different qualities that are unique to Krishna, that makes him distinct from all the other expansions. So Balaram also has his gopis. He performs Rasa Lila. When he came to Vrindavan, he was performing all these different activities, intimate activities with his gopis, and of course he was very friendly in relationship to Krishna's gopis. And then he has his flute. He also has the flute. And the flute is such a unique instrument or personality that when Krishna plays this flute in such an enchanting way, that sound reaches each and every devotee in such a way that they consider that Krishna is calling me personally. And they all become attracted towards that. And that flute is just, as gopis in Chaitanya Charitamrita, they would describe, that flute is just like a poison of a snake, that it enters the heart and it captures the heart. And then one who hears that flute, he cannot hear any other sound and he cannot think about anything else but Krishna. So this is the amazing effect of that sound that the flute produces. And of course we know that any animate object becomes inanimate and every inanimate object becomes animate. And sometimes Gopit would also criticize the flute, saying, because actually they were jealous of the flute, because flute in Sanskrit it's actually a male, and then how can this male flute rest on Krishna's lips? And they would be very, very disturbed by that. And then they would be saying that this flute, it's just so imperfect, it is crooked, it has so many holes on it. But actually, while kind of criticizing the flute, actually they would be praising the flute. So it's just so amazing and so wonderful what kind of qualities those flute has and what kind of effects it can produce. So those different activities as such that Krishna performs are just so attractive, they're so sweet. And that's so unique for Vrindavan. It's that sweetness that covers the greatness of Vrindavan. And it's not that many times we consider Vaikuntha to be much greater than the Vrindavan and much more opulent than Vrindavan. But actually this is not so. In Vaikuntha, what is there? There is a Chintamani stone, right? So what does Chintamani stone do? When it touches the iron, it turns it into gold. So that's basically the only thing that it can do. But in Vrindavan, what is so wonderful about Vrindavan is that in Vrindavan there is Chintamani stone. And that Chintamani stone, it's a wish-fulfilling stone. So anybody wishes anything, that stone will provide. And not only Chintamani, there are Surabhi cows, which can fulfill any kind of desire. And not just Surabhi cows, there are desire trees. Anybody desiring anything, all the trees will fulfill. So Vrindavan, it's so much more opulent. There is a whole pastime in Chaitanya Charitamrita about Hira Panchami, when Lakshmi, servants of Lakshmi chastise servants of Lord Jagannath, and then Shrivas is so excited about her goddess, his goddess Lakshmi, and saying how she is so wonderful and everything, but then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is smiling and Swarup Damodar, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructs Swarup Damodar to explain the glories of Sri Vrindavan. How actually Vrindavan, it's much, much more opulent and glorious than what glory and opulence Lakshmi can manifest. So these are some wonderful, sweet expansions and features of Vrindavan that even no Vaikuntha can compare to. And we know that Krishna performs definitely those sweet pastimes, again, to attract the devotees. Iti driksvali labir ananda kunde svagosham nimajantam akyapayantam. In Damodarashtra we hear that why all these wonderful pastimes are performed, because they drown the devotees in the pools, in the ocean of nectar. They're so drowned in those wonderful, wonderful pastimes. And when we read all the different scriptures and Puranas and so on, we can see that there are no pastimes as the pastimes that Krishna can perform. Vishnu doesn't perform such kind of amazing, amazing and wonderful and so sweet and attractive pastimes as Krishna does. So this is something that is so unique to these pastimes of Lord Krishna. And here we see that this amazing, like apparently mundane activities, as we have said, that the boys perform in the forest. Krishna is also performing, imitating different sounds and so on. But here again, they're just so amazing that they, again, as we said, they draw that attention and capture all the whole beings of his devotees. That's so wonderful. That when Krishna actually has to go to tend the cows in the morning, that he is practically not allowed to go. Because his parents are so, especially Mother Yashoda, they're so affectionate towards him. They're so attached to him. Of course, in the morning there are some boys that are there. They help Krishna a little bit with the dressing. Although Krishna has his servants and everything. So there are a few of them, most intimate ones are there. And then when Krishna comes out of the house after breakfast, then he's supposed to go. But then Mother Yashoda, this is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, then Mother Yashoda, she doesn't allow Krishna practically to go to the forest. And actually, if it would be up to her, Krishna would always stay in the home. He would never go into the forest. But then, of course, there are so many other living entities. There are so many birds and animals. They're waiting for Krishna in the forest. There are cowherd boys waiting for Krishna. Now it's their time. Now they want Krishna. Because Krishna doesn't spend time with everyone at the same place, at the same time. So they wanted Krishna now. But Mother Yashoda is so attached. And then when Krishna starts going towards the forest and he's ready, he takes his stick and the flute and buffalo horn and everything else is there. And Balaram also, everybody's ready and the boys comes around Krishna and they're about to go. Then Mother Yashoda still catches Krishna and then she gives him some pan to chew on, and then Krishna is about to go again now, and then he makes few steps, and then Yashoda Mai, she turns, kind of walking back, but then it is described in a crane-like way. She twists her neck and looks back towards Krishna, and again runs back towards him, and then she gives him some more fruits, she gives him more sweets to eat, she gives him more drinks to drink, and then somehow still again Krishna is trying to convince her, yes, I'm feeling, I'm nourished and everything is fine, let me go now. And then she kind of agrees, but then again Krishna goes, and then she again comes back, and then she's adjusting his dress, ornaments, everything. She just can't let him go. She just can't let him go. She's so attracted and so enchanted by him and so attached to him, and can't go. Of course, this is the spiritual world. This is reposed upon Krishna. It's not just like the material world when we find that attachment in the home. You know, like yesterday also, for example, I was trying to invite somebody for the Nityananda festival, and then devotees have so many different kinds of excuses. No, this is there, the work is there, that is there, we have to do this. It's so attached, but there is no attachment to Krishna. There is no understanding how wonderful and important this festival is, and how it affects our consciousness, and how it helps us to advance in spiritual service. Even more so if we can perform some service. There are always some excuses, some strong material attachment, but attachment towards what? Attachment towards sense gratification. Because it's material, it has nothing to do with Krishna. It's not attachment towards Krishna. And that's the problem. When somebody is not trained in an appropriate way, train in detachment and from matter and sense gratification, and train in attachment towards Krishna, then that's going to be a big problem. Because even at home, which mother would let any son go out of the home? It's just natural, of course. Again, it's natural. It seems like human, like what the activities that Krishna performs, but it's perverted. It's for personal sense gratification. It's not for the benefit of some other living being. It's just bodily consideration, bodily attachment. There is no subtle consideration. No. It's just that affection and attachment towards the body. And that we see. Then therefore when somebody grows up in such a manner, it's such a very binding and binding way actually, then of course, then how will he have any idea or detachment from home and being able to come to the temple? Yeah, it's going to be very difficult, because priority is going to be where I'm attached. Priority is going to be where I'm feeling, like safe and sheltered, which is complete illusion, of course, and where I'm dependent on so many things, where I don't become independent. So this is why in the spiritual life, that's why we have the Gurukul training, that's why we have certain kinds of trainings where, one can develop that kind of attachment towards Krishna and detachment towards material things, when one can practically grow up and become a man. Not that when one remains at home, and then of course, and what kind of spiritual practice then one could perform, if that is the state of mentality. Because the atmosphere within the realm of the home, it shouldn't be just that kind of atmosphere that is bodily centered. Because then sometimes parents also, when they're overly attached, then they wonder when the boys reach their teenage, then why they sometimes frown upon the parents with their nose down and so many other things, and then things don't happen the way always parents want to happen, because they don't consider that subtle aspect, they don't consider that emotional need that exists also within the boys. And then that creates a lot of inhibition also in their growth, specifically even more so spiritual growth. Because material attachment, it's towards the body, it's towards the senses. If the relationship, it's only based on that where is the question of relationship being based on the more emotional level, which is the level of affection. But then even greater than this, it's a level of spirit soul. It's a spiritual life, which is Krishna consciousness. That's the level of Krishna consciousness. There are different levels, and actually parents should consider that when, like it said, one shouldn't become mother, father, this and that, if it's not ready to liberate one from the clutches of material, birth, old age, disease, and death. So if that is not the case, then one just becomes practically crippled emotionally and also spiritually. So that's what we see if there is that strong attachment which is perverted. Not like this attachment that Mother Yashoda has for Krishna. That's spiritual, because she is absolutely selfless. She doesn't have any tinge of any kind of selfishness within her dealings and relationship with Krishna. But in the material world that is not the case. It's just completely contrary. And then of course, then one doesn't, if that is the case material, then how can one progress? How can one become detached? How can one become attached to Krishna? One doesn't see the forest before the trees. That's the expression. So that means one is not aware of his environment, one is not aware of his surrounding, anything else around, is not aware of the spiritual life, spiritual practice, when he's just completely engrossed in the body, in the senses, and the relationships which enhance those. So that's why one has to go out. It's also kind of a principle. One has to go out. One has to leave the home for some time at least, and develop some other qualities and the skills. Of course, in case of Krishna, it's just, as we pointed out, it's all focused upon him, and it's all centered upon him, and that's what makes such a big difference between the activities which we said again in the beginning, coming back to this. They appear human-like, but they're not as human-like because they're Krishna-centered. So Mother Yashoda, yes, like this, and even Nanda Baba, they don't allow Krishna. In a sense, they have a lot of difficulties letting Krishna go out in the forest and play. They're so affectionate, they're so attached to him. And then finally, Krishna has to convince by arguments. He's very strongly imploring upon Mother Yashoda that you have also some other duties. You didn't take breakfast, you should go back. And so many the cows are waiting, they have to go for grazing, and all these other boys, everybody's waiting, I have to go. And then somehow Mother Yashoda, she agrees. It is explained she's like a cow which just had a newborn calf. She's just so anxious, and she's just so attached to that calf. So then she kind of gives him also some instructions. Please don't go into the deep forest, don't get in some thorny places, and she's very much in anxiety because she knows that Krishna will not listen to her advice. So she's speaking with so much anxiety. And then also when Krishna leaves, of course Nanda Baba is there, and he's hugging separately Krishna, he's hugging separately Balaram, then he hugs them both together, and then he's smelling their head, and then he's also giving them instruction, and then he's also having a lot of difficulties to let them go. But then also Krishna had to point out, Nanda, you have Baba, you have so many other duties to perform today and so many other things. And then finally somehow they become separated. And then Mother Yashoda stands motionlessly, seeing the Krishna, and they look at Krishna until Krishna completely becomes lost in the forest. And then throughout the whole day, Nanda and Yashoda, what they're doing, they're completely thinking of Krishna, in anxiety. And Nanda also, he sends his servants to bring news of what Krishna is doing in the forest. And then till the evening, they're in complete anxiety, and they just await at the gate, not in the house. It's not like Krishna, when Krishna just kind of bumps into the house and then he said, here I am, I've come, and this and that. No, they're outside, they're waiting with so much anxiety. Where is Krishna? And then when they see the dust from the hoofs of the calves and cows, then they know, oh, Krishna is coming. They're just awaiting. So much affection they have towards him. And then, of course, when finally Krishna comes, there is another exchange that takes place. So these are such a wonderful pastimes where we see which Krishna performed. They appeared as human-like, but they're not human-like because they're God-centered, they are Krishna-centered. And Krishna is just acting in such an amazing way, just to draw again this attention of his devotees, to draw that and enhance that rasa and increase that relationship. Like also it was very interesting pastime that once Krishna was going also with the cows and the cowherd boys, and then Mother Yashoda, she said, your feet are so soft, they're soft like a butter, and you should wear shoes. And then Krishna didn't agree with that, he didn't want to wear shoes. So then he was saying that, oh my dear mother, that are we Vaishyas? And then she agreed, she said, yes. So aren't we supposed to take care of the cows and calves? And then she agreed, she said, yes. And then Krishna said, aren't we also supposed to protect them? And of course she agreed, yes. And then Krishna said, so if I'm supposed to wear the shoes, then we should give shoes to all of the cows and all of the calves. And then Mother Yashoda gave up. She said, okay. She gave up the idea of giving shoes to Krishna. Because of course, Krishna when he goes with cowherd boys in the forest, when they play, he leaves the dust from his lotus feet. His footprints, nobody ever touches those footprints. Nobody never destroys or steps on those footprints. Because there's a source of unlimited joy and pleasure for those who see and those who can relate, who can actually remember Krishna like this by seeing all of those footprints that Krishna is making throughout the forest in the dust. So like this, all these wonderful pastimes are performed by Krishna again just to draw his devotees and to enable them to develop this wonderful relationship, so intimate relationship with him, which is not manifested or available in any other form or in any other rasa. Hare Krishna. Any comments or questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you for a nice class. You mentioned about this Chaitanya Leela. So there in Adi section it's mentioned that Lord Chaitanya showed his universal form to Advaita Acharya. The question is that Advaita Acharya is Mahavishnu himself. And this universal form, as we hear that Krishna comes only once in a day of Brahma, and other Dwapar Yuga, Vishnu expands himself, Vishnu comes. So what is so special about, only Lord Chaitanya could show universal form, and Mahavishnu, he is himself Mahavishnu, so why he is asking for universal form?
Why did Advaita Acharya?
Yeah, he is Mahavishnu himself, so he knows what is universal form. Vishnu only expands himself as, so far as we have heard. But Advaita Acharya is asking Lord to show universal form.
Why exactly universal? I don't know. Why exactly universal form? Maybe somebody else can answer.
Maybe Advaita Acharya requested, that's why
yeah, he did.
Showed.
Yeah. Wow.
So his request is there, so Mahaprabhu showed.
That is not the question. So, question is, he is Mahavishnu. Vishnu only expands himself as universal form, Virat Rupa.
Well, Krishna can
It's not beyond his capacity, Advaita Acharya's capacity. So why is asking to show that form?
There might be some special sweetness about it when Krishna shows it rather than Vishnu. I don't know.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. You very nicely explained the dynamics of devotional service, how Sambandha and Prayojan is linked by the Abhideya. And you also mentioned that how the first step in God realization is to understand that God is great. And yet when Krishna performs this ordinary pastime, apparently ordinary pastime, even great demigods become bewildered. So, but still, because of revelation, Krishna displays extraordinary pastime again to set things right. So they realize that no, Krishna is great. So in our process of devotional service, no problem with Krishna. We understand that Krishna is great. But while doing our bhakti, devotional process, executing devotional process, we have to deal with devotees, and apparently devotees also seem to be ordinary. So how do we overcome this tendency to see devotees ordinary and see the super glorious position of devotees?
Yes, that is what is recommended, to always serve the devotees. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, he told every brahmachari should serve another brahmachari. At least 5 brahmacharis should be served in such a way throughout the day. So when we serve others, then we will develop that mood of respect for others. And we will, of course, develop the quality of humility. And again, enhance that service attitude which would become then more genuine. So then, in that kind of consciousness, then one can see how everybody is related to Krishna. And if, in the worst case, if nothing else, again, we might not be able to understand the position of the devotees as eternal servants of Krishna, then if nothing else, then we see that at least within that devotee there is Krishna as a Paramatma. And then Krishna can also be pleased by us rendering service to those, who are, again, in some connection with him. And if in nothing else, then Krishna is within the heart of those devotees. So, primarily by service, by rendering service and purifying ourselves from the anarthas, and then developing that higher consciousness through which we will and can realize then how every devotee actually is part and parcel of Krishna. And that Krishna doesn't distinguish, actually doesn't see that difference whether somebody, or just like on Uttama level, it is just, Uttama Bhakta doesn't see anyone being in Maya or anyone serving Krishna, he sees everybody serving Krishna. So coming to that higher consciousness, how? By the process of devotional service. Is that okay?
Hare Krishna. हिंदी में?
Okay.
ठीक है, ट्रांसलेट कर दूँगा।
हाँ, पूछो।
जैसे आपने बता रहे थे कि जब जंगल में जाते थे तो उन लोगों को आनंद मिलता था, ग्वाल वालों के लिए। तो इन लोग मतलब को आनंद नहीं मिलता था, गोपी लोग को जो घर में रहते थे उनको। तो भगवान श्री कृष्ण जैसे अभी उधर गोलोक वृंदावन में भी है, इधर भी कथा करके आनंद ले सकते हैं। तो हर जगह अलग अलग कृष्ण जैसे नाम के रूप में यहाँ भी भगवान का कीर्तन करके आनंद ले सकते हैं। तो वहाँ अलग अलग कर रहे थे, ऐसा क्यों हो रहा था? जैसे
So when Krishna leaves, then those who remain, they don't feel satisfaction? Is that?
So, as it is said that we can experience Krishna by his name, by his paraphernalia. So why do gopis feel separation when Krishna go out in the field?
Mm-hmm. Because there is no difference between anxiety for Krishna and pleasure with Krishna. They're all blissful. Both are blissful. So then one enhances the other. So it's just over-expanding. Whereas in material world, which is world of duality, we experience things in a different way. We feel pleasure and we feel suffering. But suffering in spiritual world, apparent suffering is actually nothing else but pleasure and satisfaction. So the quality of it is different. So everything is pleasure, everything is bliss. And it serves to enhance each other. Okay? It's okay.
Krishna Prabhuji, thank you very much for the wonderful class. So this greatness that you are talking about, God is great. So in Christianity also they have this understanding about God is great. And when we have this understanding, then likely to go in the Vaikuntha planets, because there this awe and reverence is there. So
if anyone is attached to the Vedic process, more to the rules rather than to pleasing Krishna or having some more intimate relationship, then that's where one goes. And even in Golok Vrindavan there is a portion of where Radha and Krishna appear like as in Vaikuntha, sitting on a throne as a king and queen. So if one is more attached to like these rules and regulations, then that's when, and to what one becomes attached to that kind of form, that kind of expansion, yeah.
So then this particular stage seems to be safer, because then there is very less chances of a person committing offenses. Like we also, it is said that, of course there is a controversy whether we were there with Krishna initially, or we never went to the spiritual world. But then, you know, like most of the time we accept that, okay, we were with Krishna and then we committed offenses, and that's how, you know, I mean, we wanted to be like Krishna or whatever, and that's why we came here. So in Vaikuntha planets, if we would have been there, then there is less chances to commit offenses actually. So isn't it not safer what Christian people, they also believe, and, you know, in case if we also try to follow it, safer?
It's safer from our conditioned point of view, but once we are not conditioned anymore, then that consideration, it's not at all present. Even if one apparent, like you may say, sometimes how gopis speak to Krishna, or even Mother Yashoda chastising Krishna or whatever, you may say, we are committing offenses, but Krishna doesn't take an offense. It's not an offense. You know, these are not, because they're done with love. And that's better than any other, I don't know, personality, or even sometimes demons, like I said, they think of Krishna or they do, but there is no bhakti. So what is use of that? You know, so you may say safer performing rules and regulations. Yes, on the condition level, but not on the constitutional level. So for now, yes, whoever is on that level, then for them it's safer. Yes, they may consider, and if you're always, it's just like driving. It's the whole process is given as a driving. In the beginning, you're so much careful, you know, to press the clutch, to change the gear, to do this, you look here, look there. You know, you're so much concerned, you're so much feeling safer, you know, when you're conscious of what you do. Later on, when it becomes your second nature, you don't think about this at all. That's what Raganuga is, just spontaneous. You're just doing everything, but now your focus is not doing all of this. Your focus is, you know, where you're supposed to go and what you're going to do there. Okay? Okay, we'll stop here because time is getting late. So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavangscha